Why I believe. I have always asked myself this question. Why do I believe in God? Why is it that something within me tells me that there is something out there that is bigger than I can comprehend, and that my heart is drawn ever so gently to that which is out there? I have never seen God, but I have always felt God's presence in my life. I did not choose God. Instead, God chose me. Yes, and He has been with me as a constant living presence. I have never been afraid of God. I have no reason to be afraid of God. Instead, I have felt that God provides me with the strength. He provides me with comfort. He provides me with warmth. He provides me with understanding. He provides me with love. He provides me with the foundation that's ever so generous and overflowing. I do not merit this relationship with God. No. I have never even made a move towards knowing God. So, the question, why do I believe? To answer this question, I look back at the first 10 years of my life. As a child, I have never consciously made any effort to follow God or do anything that might be taken as being a follower of God. So why then did I always feel God's presence? Perhaps because as a young child I was just beginning to achieve consciousness of the world around me. I was so small and I was in need of physical support as I began out in life. So the question is, why did I not just trust in something seen and visible? Surely I could have trusted in people that were bigger than me at home and at school. I could have sought support from the power of money. Surely as a child I knew that money was a means to achieve a lot of things. Good food, good shelter, good clothing, and all of this brought one happiness. I could have sought support from my own achievements, getting good grades, participating and standing out in sports, or simply being good in exposing my talents, such as singing and storytelling. However, none of the above mattered to me. I lived my childhood life as a child in a state of bliss. Although I lived physically in the body, I also lived mentally in the mind. And I guess that it is for this reason that none of the material things mattered so much to me. It was because I was more in the mind. It does not cost anything to move into the mental state of bliss. I would consider the mental state of bliss as something that is detached from this world, a state of mind where there is no stress, there is no poverty, there is no pressure, there is no confusion, there is no competition, there is no ambition. In fact, there is no time. It's as though someone divine has pressed the pause button and time has stood still. The past and the future have been suspended and have no significance. How did I get into this mental state of bliss as a child? Surely as a child I could not have architected this for myself. In fact, I would never have known that such a state existed in the first place, let alone knowing how to enter into this state. All of this would have been too complex for my small being. The simple answer is that there was someone for whom I was important. I repeat, the simple answer is that there was someone for whom I was important, someone who had an infinite capacity to care and selected me as special and cared for me as a child, even though me as a child knew not about the existence of this infinite being. There was someone who has a divine plan for me and my life, and I knew nothing about this supernatural intervention. How else can I explain why my mind was not affected by the utter chaos that existed in the physical world around me? I can truly and with uttermost conviction say that this divine being filled my mind with bliss, so much so that there was no place for anything else, and it is this filling up with bliss that prevented my mind from being marred by the not so nice happenings that took place in my life as a child. I was not subjected to extremes of any kind. There was no physical violence towards me. There was no violation of my being. There was no threat to my life. But although there were no extremes, the normal things in my life were in no way conducive to a stable physical and mental upbringing. My mind could have been easily affected by the sheer poverty that I was brought up in, the utter confusion that existed constantly between my parents, the total disorder that existed in the surrounding neighborhood where I grew up, the disgusting filth and garbage that was piling up outside and which could be seen everywhere, the sheer feeling of being lost in the world that I have come into, for which I had no way of knowing why I had come into this world, what my purpose was of being in this world, and how I was going to live in this world. I did not ask to be born, but now I know I was given the gift of life, of being born in this world. All of this happened while I was a child. As a child, I was conscious of the physical and the mental, but I had no experience of the spiritual. Even though my family was religious and I attended religious services regularly and studied in a school which had its foundation in religion, I had no experience of the spiritual. The only spiritual experience I had was that which was deep within me, which I felt that something supernatural, something more powerful than me, which was transcending me from the physical state into this blissful state. Although I was aware of this, I had no idea that it could have been a spiritual being that was causing this to happen. This was all the more evident at the time of utter confusion within my family. I would be conscious that my mind would switch off the confusion and not have any consciousness of all the confusion that existed all around me. It was as if I was aware of the going-ons in the physical world, and yet the physical world in all of its shortcomings was not able to influence and impact on my mental state of bliss, contentment, and happiness. I asked myself, how could I have been happy in the midst of all that? Even though I lived in a very humble accommodation, ate very simple and basic food, wore clothes that were gifted by others, no matter how they fit, or no matter if the clothes were torn and unwearable. How did I cope? As I look back, there is only one answer. That answer does not come from science or psychology. Science and psychology may enable me to understand how my body and mind coped with my environment, but science and psychology cannot enable me to understand the actual state of bliss that I experienced, or why I was not traumatized by all that was happening around me. Science and psychology cannot explain why I spiraled upwards towards purposefulness rather than spiraled downwards towards usefulness or uselessness. I cannot explain why I came out of my childhood the better for it rather than being traumatized and the worse for it. The one answer has to be, I was in the special care of someone who loved me dearly. As a child, I was not aware of this spiritual being. I did nothing to merit any attention from this spiritual being. I was not looking for anyone to help me out of my physical situation. I was just aware that this special happening was taking place in my life. I was also aware that at the same time, there were big chances that my life could be affected in a bad way, and that there were chances that I could turn out to be a failure in life. However, having this awareness of all things, that things could go wrong in my life, I never had to make any effort to correct myself or do anything to ensure that I did not turn out to be a loser and failure as was expected. Instead, without me asking for it, I was kept in a state of bliss that spiraled me upward and kept me safe from anything that could pull me down and destroy me. I did not need motivation or psychological counseling to stay on the right path. This was because I was being protected and shielded by an unknown being who had a divine plan for my life. And this is the reason why I believe. It was because I was being protected and shielded by an unknown being who had a divine plan for my life. And this is the reason why I believe.